Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take sources you're curious about and we'll really dig into them.
Mhm.
Today we're looking at the story of just one ship, the USS Harold J. Ellison, hull number DD-864.
Right. And our source, provided by you, the listener, is the Wikipedia page for the ship.
Exactly. And our mission, our goal here is to uncover the story behind this vessel, from the person it was named after right through its entire service life to its final moments.
Okay, let's get into it.
So first off, the namesake. It's quite a story in itself.
It really is. I mean, the
Uh,
connection between the man, Ensign Harold John Ellison, and the ship
Yeah.
is so direct.
Yeah.
His actions in World War II, well, they led directly to a Navy destroyer carrying his name.
It's a very tangible legacy, isn't it?
Absolutely. A single act of heroism really echoing through history.
So let's focus on Ensign Ellison first. Born in Buffalo, New York, 1917, he became an ensign in October 41 after flight training,
Right.
then assigned to Torpedo Squadron 8, VT-8, on the USS Hornet.
Right. A famous squadron.
And then came June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. This is where things get, well, incredibly dramatic.
Yeah, it really does. He was piloting a Douglas TBD Devastator, a torpedo bomber, and his squadron's task was to hit the Japanese carriers.
But the key detail here...
They went in without fighter escort.
Yeah.
Just think about that. The urgency must have been immense. Incredible courage required.
The source says they didn't score any hits. And tragically, all the squadron's planes were shot down.
A terrible loss for the squadron itself.
And this is crucial, isn't it? Their attack, even without hits, it wasn't futile.
Not at all. That Wikipedia page points out something really important.
Right.
Their attack disrupted the Japanese formations. It threw off their timing.
Right, delayed their preparations for a second strike against the U.S. carriers.
Exactly, and think strategically, that delay, that disruption, it bought precious time. It forced the Japanese fighters down low to deal with the torpedo planes.
Just when the American dive bombers were arriving high overhead.
Precisely. And just moments later, those dive bombers hit 3 Japanese carriers. Devastatingly effective. So, Ellison's squadron, their sacrifice, it was a direct factor in that success.
Wow. So Ellison was listed as presumed dead the next day, June 5th. And for that gallantry, he was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross.
A high honor, well-deserved.
Interestingly, there was supposed to be a destroyer escort named for him first, but its construction got canceled in 44.
Ah, okay. But his name did carry on.
Yes, with the ship we're focusing on. The Gearing-class destroyer, DD-864, the USS Harold J. Ellison.
Right, the Gearings. They were sort of the next step up, an evolution from the Fletcher class towards the end of the war. More advanced.
And this one, DD-864, was built by Bethlehem Mariners Harbor. That's Staten Island.
Okay. Keel laid October 44, launched March 45. And quite touchingly, Ensign Ellison's widow, Mrs. Audrey Ellison, she sponsored the ship at the launch.
That must have been a poignant moment. Commissioned June 23rd, 1945.
Just as the war was ending, really.
So let's talk about the ship itself. Hull number DD-864, call sign NBGB. Pretty big ship, over 390 feet long.
Yeah, decent size for a destroyer that era. Beam just over 41 feet, draft around 18.5 feet.
Displacement, over 3,400 tons fully loaded. And power. Geared turbines, 60,000 shaft horsepower.
Which gave her a good turn of speed, 34 knots. That's nearly 40 miles per hour. Pretty quick.
And range was decent too, 6,500 nautical miles at 15 knots. Needed a fair few people to run her, though.
Oh yeah, complement was 367. Officers and enlisted.
And the teeth? The armament.
Well, 6 5-inch 38 caliber guns, dual purpose, good against ships and planes, and then a lot of anti-aircraft firepower.
You can see the wartime lessons there.
Definitely. 12 40mm guns, 11 20mm guns, plus 10 21-inch torpedo tubes for surface targets, and of course depth charge projectors and tracks for anti-submarine work. A real jack of all trades.
So she was commissioned, ready to go, meant for the Pacific Fleet.
Right, but as you said, commissioned in June 45, by the time she finished her shakedown cruise.
Japan surrendered, August 15th, 1945.
So, no immediate combat. Instead, her career starts in the Atlantic and the Caribbean, based out of Norfolk.
Doing what, mostly? Peacetime stuff.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Essential stuff, though.
Yeah.
Training cruises for Navy reservists, lots of anti-submarine warfare exercises, keeping the fleet sharp.
Then, starting in 47, a pattern emerges. Regular trips to the Med.
Yeah, joining the Sixth Fleet. This is peak Cold War era, remember. Showing the flag, protecting U.S. interests, maintaining stability. That was the job.
And doing varied things even then.
Absolutely. Like in April 51, she helped search for that lost British submarine, HMS Affray. Shows that Allied cooperation.
Right. Then 53, cruises to the Caribbean, Northern Europe. expanding her horizons a bit.
Then the mid-50s, more tactical training along the East Coast, more European cruises, building experience.
And then things heat up a bit. 1957, peacekeeping in the Eastern Med.
Yeah, that was in the wake of the '56 Suez Crisis, the Navy playing a role in calming things down.
Followed by the Lebanon crisis in the summer of '58.
Right, and she was right in the thick of it there. Screening the carrier Saratoga and the heavy cruiser Des Moines while the Sixth Fleet put Marines ashore. A real rapid response operation.
Shows the power projection capability.
Definitely. Then from late '58 into early '59, something different. Task Group Alpha.
What was that about?
Focused on anti-submarine warfare. Developing new tactics, testing new gear. ASW was a huge focus during the Cold War.
Makes sense. After that,
Back to the med cruise routine, starting September '59. And then in 1960, her home port shifted south to Charleston, South Carolina.
okay. The source also mentions the deployment to the Persian Gulf in '61, Kuwait crisis.
Yeah, shows her reach wasn't just the Atlantic and Med. She went where needed.
Then January '62, this is kind of amazing, Project Mercury support.
Yeah, part of the Atlantic Recovery Unit for the early space flights. Imagine that, a WWII or a destroyer involved in the space race.
Wild. Underscores the versatility, I guess.
It does. Later that year, 1962, she went in for a major upgrade, the Framei overhaul.
Fleet rehabilitation and modernization. That was a big program for these older destroyers, wasn't it?
Huge. Extended their lives significantly, updated sensors, weapons, basically brought them into the modern era as much as possible.
Yeah.
Happened at the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard.
So she comes out of Fram in early '63, spends the next couple of years training off the Atlantic coast, getting proficient with the new systems.
Right, getting ready for whatever came next.
And what came next was big. September '65, she heads through the Panama Canal with Destroyer Squadron 24 into the Pacific.
And straight into the Vietnam War.
Her duties there were quite varied, according to the source.
Seems like it. Playing guard for the carriers on Yankee Station in the Tonkin Gulf, that's a dangerous, essential job.
Also, Sea Dragon operations.
Which involved interdicting North Vietnamese coastal traffic, often under fire.
Search and rescue, too. Picking up downed pilots.
Incredibly important. And naval gunfire support, using those 5-inch guns to support troops ashore.
So a very active deployment.
Clearly. And after that tour, she didn't just head home. She went the long way around.
The round-the-world cruise. Returning to Norfolk via the Suez Canal in April '66.
Quite a voyage. Highlights the Navy's global presence then.
Then an overhaul back in Norfolk for the rest of '66.
Getting refitted after hard service.
1967 saw her back with the Atlantic Fleet, visiting Brazil, crossing the equator, then a long cruise around Africa to the Middle East.
That sounds interesting. The source mentions a port visit in Ethiopia where Emperor Haile Selassie actually came aboard.
Yeah, imagine hosting royalty on a destroyer.
Quite something. Also visited Kenya, Mauritius, Mozambique, Pakistan. Lots of diplomatic flag showing, presumably before returning in March '71.
Okay. July '71, assigned to Desron 36, still mainly Atlantic operations, but then a shift in '72.
Right. July 1st, 1972, reassigned to Desron 34, part of the Navy Reserve.
So her primary role changes a bit, more focus on training reservists.
Seems that way. Still an active ship, though. She had another overhaul in Portsmouth, Virginia, first half of '73.
Followed by a Caribbean cruise, Port-au-Prince, San Juan, Bermuda. Probably reserve training.
Likely, yeah. But she's still deployed.
Yeah.
July '74, back to the Med, escorting the USS Independence.
Okay. Then another change later that year, November '74. Transferred to Desron 30, home port moved to Philadelphia.
Right. And for the rest of her U.S. Navy career, the focus seems to have stayed on training reservists. Cruises up and down the East Coast, Caribbean.
Until October 1st, 1983. The end of her U.S. Navy service.
And the source notes she was decommissioned the same day as the USS William C. Law. They were the last two Gearing-class destroyers in the U.S. Navy.
The end of an era for that whole class of ships.
Truly.
But not the end of the story for the Ellison herself.
No, not quite. On that same day, October 1st, 1983, she was transferred.
To Pakistan. Renamed PNS Shah Jahan, hull number D-164.
So she got a second life, serving another Navy, based out of Karachi.
For how long?
10 years. From 1983 to 1993. Continued service under a different flag. It's fascinating how these ships carry on sometimes.
Providing valuable service, presumably. But her final fate. It was pretty definitive.
Yeah. In 1994, the source says she was cannibalized for spare parts first.
And
then, used as a target, sunk during an exercise called Nasim Ubar.
By what?
A Pakistan Air Force Mirage jet firing an Exocet anti-ship missile.
Wow. So a warship named for a hero, served for decades, ends up as a target for modern weaponry.
A stark end, but maybe fitting in a way. A final service helping train the forces that defend Pakistan. A complete life cycle.
So we've traced it all, from Ensign Ellison's incredible bravery at Midway
Mm-hmm.
to the launch of the ship bearing his name, her long U.S. Navy career spanning the Cold War, Vietnam,
The shift to reserve training, then a whole new chapter with the Pakistan Navy.
and finally becoming a target in an exercise. It's quite a journey.
It really is. It just highlights the incredibly long and varied lives these vessels can have. They witness so much history, participate in so many different kinds of operations.
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? How one person's courage can echo through decades, literally embodied in the steel of a ship.
Absolutely.
And how that ship, in turn, reflects the changing world around it, the conflicts, the alliances, the technology. It really makes you wonder what other stories are out there locked away in the histories of other ships just waiting to be uncovered.